Hi, Rob here again. Thank you for joining me. And as ever, please like, subscribe and share and leave a comment or whatever. It's always good to have you on my channel. And as I say, thank you for listening and watching. So today, just want to talk about something that dawned on me. I guess it was yesterday, in fact. And maybe it's been, dawning on me very slowly but surely. But basically, since I've been making these recent reels and shorts where I've been playing my usual kind of Sunday rambles and then bringing that video home, editing it and then putting it into some sort of melodic or musical context, usually with electronic music, because if you're regular to my channel, you know I love electronic music and it's the sort of things I compose, and I'm working on the infamous album that needs to be finished, which I am going to get around to, I promise. I assure you I will get around to it. More on that in another video. A thing I've noticed is as I've been putting these different soundscapes to the drumming using various synths, modulators and sequencers and all sorts of things, and under a minute, which is what a reel has to be, or a short, trying to make some melodic content in there that makes sense, and that has some kind of development even in that short minute time frame. And I've noticed my playing various things. I edited one today, which will go up probably tomorrow. Where are we now? This is going to be probably a Tuesday this goes out, or I might release it before, who knows. Let's not worry about the day. Thank you for watching whenever you're watching it. And I was watching some of the phrasing that I was playing. And I've talked a lot about phrasing. I think it's something that drummers should think about. If you think of them as drum fills, that's great. But phrases, to me, is a more musical way of looking at it. And thinking of the melodic content and the syncopation of that phrase is really important too. So if we played a classic three-stroke rough, ba 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 bosh, onto the cymbal, da 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 sh, the classic fill that everyone uses. If we had that in some melodic content, da do da, ba boo da, do da, da da. That rhythm could be played on any melodic instrument. You could get these two fingers and plop on a piano, dung ding, dung dung. You could play it anywhere. So thinking about our fills, and even a digga digga dugga 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 fill, thinking of that phrase, in some melodic content and in some melodic way, would be quite interesting. And any linear fills you do, think of the bass drum as the lower end of the frequency of the drum kit, which we know it is, but think of it as maybe, I don't know, a tuba, sousaphone or something, bass clarinet, something, and the snare being more like a trumpet or a piccolo, whatever, you know what I mean. And toms being more mellow, like a flugelhorn or French horn or something. If you start looking at your phrases that way, you start to hear within the music and the song that you're playing at that time, you may think differently about how you phrase. So, well, you will if you can get into that. And I know I've spoken about this before, but I just wanted to touch on that to make sure I did, quantify that as well, because that's quite important. But yeah, some of the phrasing I was doing, I was realizing is an amalgam of all the drummers and the former me's, if you like, through all those different last sort of 4 decades or so. Let's not go into that. And all my listening. So there was one little phrase that I'd played on a clip that's going out, as I say, probably tomorrow, where I'm tuning those Tama Star toms up quite high, like a jazz tuning. And the sort of Hitmaker snare drum, the DW, is just kind of its usual kind of mid tone. And just the way that sounds with the 18-inch DW bass drum is just beautiful. As you know, I like Sadie, that drum set. I like the way it sounds. And I noticed some of the phrasing was very from my kind of jazz orientation, I would guess. Going up from the floor tom, do-do-gang, up to the top tom, do-do-gang, as a melodic kind of refrain that I would keep coming back to. And other elements I'd play shortly afterwards were maybe a bit more drum and bass or something a bit more modern. And it dawned on me that all these things that we reference, I know I've talked about before, But it's really amazing when you see it actually come out in your playing, because I can actually see it. That's what these rambles are about, you know, these little shorts that I do. It's advertising my drumming, of course, advertising me for drum lessons and mentoring and different things. But it's also an expression of who I am and what I do and how I play and how I see things. So this idea of some of the phrases, you know, referencing and playing from a jazz phrasing point to the next one being maybe a drum and bass or, you know, a rock phrasing on the same drum kit, I think is actually something I'm quite enjoying, let's put it that way. And I think it's something you should check out in your own playing, because I've mentioned before on these clips when we've talked about, you know, you're playing, you're improvising, looking inward at what you do. Filming yourself on your phone is a really good idea. You know, you'll watch back and some of it you might go, oh, but some of it you're bound to go, that was good, or even that was brilliant, you know, and that's okay to say that. It's okay to do that. And you can become your own kind of judge and jury, and you can weigh up what you like and what you don't like. When you know you're treading water and there's some phrases that you don't really want to play, you know, noting them and thinking, right, I need to block that one out, and maybe instead of doing that one that I do, let's do something else, or let's start it differently, let's play something in the middle of that phrase differently, or something at the end of that phrase differently to change it. And you know, this growth I think is really important. And then I'm putting these kind of well, to me, and hopefully you guys, some of you guys like it, if not all of you, hopefully, but I'm putting these phrases out there in the orders that I wish to play them. And they're all going out in a certain way, you know, physically, as music. And then I bring them home and put that electronic music to it, and all of a sudden it takes a different turn. And I think this is something I've talked about before, which is what I love about a lot of my favorite musicians, the way they sort of take styles and bend them a little bit, and, you know, alter bits and add a bit of something else to make it something completely different that sounds new to us. And I think reinvention like that and experimentation is the way forward for music. We've had a debate on one of these things before where we've said, you know, we could easily say all the great jazz albums have been made, all the great classical albums have been made, and all the best rock and pop albums have been made. So what's the point of carrying on? But we do, because what's the point of not carrying on? We're human beings, we need to create, we need to move forward. Now we can just emulate and copy, that's okay, fine, if that's what you want to do. But taking those elements of what you've copied and then bending it round, and in time, we can't do it straight away, but in time bend it into a sort of picture that works for you, and you put some of your own elements with it. Like I said a few videos ago about how I took a Dave Weckl fill, a Dennis Chambers fill, and something that I like to play, and I could play them in that order, Dave, me, Dennis, or I could swap them around, or, you know, whatever. So I'm getting messages. Yeah, I could change around any which way that I wanted. And all of a sudden, those phrases stopped being Dennis's and Dave's, and they became mine. You know, I owned them because of what I put before it and what I put after them. And also the inflection of the way I played it changed some accents maybe. And just it's a different pair of hands with a different pair of sticks. It's going to sound a little bit different anyway. So, you know, these elements are really coming together, and I'm getting a buzz from putting some of these jazz elements, like I mentioned, that do-do-ging, from the floor tom to the top tom, that phrase, over the top of, you know, a sequence like jigga, 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 wah, 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 and I'm changing, you know, with the oscillator or whatever, I'm changing the waveform a little bit of it. So, you know, you would expect to have that on dance music and stuff. And on this particular clip, I'm playing like more of a Philly Joe Jones press roll type thing, sometimes a triplet phrase press roll, so it's swinging, sometimes straight 16, so it's more straight ahead, and I'm coming off of that. Well, you'll see it. I'll probably attach it to this video anyway so you can see it. But all the sounds around it kind of change it and give it a different kind of feel almost. So if you weren't really a jazz fan and you saw some of those things I'm doing, you might think that came more, as I say, from the drum and bass sort of camp, you know, or something like that. Whereas old time jazzers would say, oh, that's more of a jazzy thing, and he's got that modern music over the top, and it's, but, you know, as I say, that sort of juxtaposition or whatever is attractive to me, and it's attractive to me, and it attracts me to other musicians and bands and drummers that do a similar thing, not exactly the same as me, but doing that kind of thing in a different way, if you know what I mean. You know, it shows sort of imagination, but it also shows you know, the fact that you've understood the depth of your instrument. You know, you've studied jazz, rock, pop, you know, the little bits that you're throwing in, you know, marching, drumming, which is what this one's kind of about, from the press roll and everything, then into the sort of New Orleans jazzy thing with the triplet roll. Clearly, I've studied that stuff and I've understood it. But I've decided to throw it against something that's completely not that. It hasn't got like a bass going boom, doom, 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 boom, doom, and trumpets and stuff. It's got ultra modern synths working, not against it, but with it. Though in theory, you could say they're two different things, so they are working against each other, but they actually come together quite nicely. So this video is about that. So watch the video and sort of get into what I'm saying. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. And, you know, more importantly, even if you don't do any of that, look at your own playing in this way as well. With all these videos, if I don't hear from you, you know, I don't sit at home sulking. I think that's fine. What I'm really wanting you to do is think about it for yourself. You know, you have to do these things for yourself. I'm here, I'm a very buzzed, creative musician, I'd like to think. And I like sharing these ideas with you. And I could easily sit here and never share any of these ideas with anybody, but that's not the point. The idea is to share music, the love of music with other people, and the love of drumming, which is one of the reasons we're here, isn't it? So yeah, have a think about it. Get into filming yourself. Think about these things about your own playing. Where do certain things come from that you play? And are you happy referencing that straight off? And if you are, great. Or do you want to take your favourite Bonham fill that you do, that you always throw out, and then change it a little bit to make it more you? And I think sometimes we're a bit scared to take classic stuff and not change it, because it works. It's a cliche. It's brilliant. Not cliche in a bad way, but it's something we know and it's safe. Whereas something I think I've come up with might be a bit like, might not be liked, but you've got to go through that barrier. So have a think about it. Better still, get on the drum kit and do something about it. Okay, guys, thanks for joining me. Now, if you can hear a lot of banging, my poor neighbour next door has locked himself out. And I haven't got a ladder, unfortunately. I'm not a ladder kind of guy. So he's finding his way into his flat. So if you've heard some banging throughout this video, I hope he's in. I think he is. I've been out a few times to make sure he's okay. But yeah, so maybe I should own a ladder in case that happens again for anyone else. That's why I live on a ground floor. But anyway, so if you're wondering what that banging was, that's what it was. It's not someone breaking in. It's someone, well, it's someone trying to break into their own flat. Anyway, I hope he does well. I'll go out and make sure he's okay in a second. But thanks for joining me. As I say, leave some comments. There's always something crazy. Last time on this video, we had the post lady showed up, bing, bing, knocked on the door and delivered some bills. Lovely. Now I've got my neighbour locked out. So, well, I haven't. He's locked himself out. Anyway, I'm wittering on. Have a great day wherever you are in the world. And please leave a comment if you so wish, and think about what I said and get on it. All right, guys, take care. See you soon. Bye.